All this meeting of the Orangeville OPP Detachment Board to order at 5 o'clock on the nose. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda for this meeting? Grant? Ian, thank you. All in favor? Yes. Thank you, everyone. In camera, we did have an in-camera session tonight. And in the in-camera session, we talked about some things at the courthouse. There was a new board member check-in just to make sure everyone had all the materials required because we have 3 new members. We talked a little bit about police checks for board members. And then there was an adoption of minutes. And that was essentially what was discussed in those sessions. So today for the public session, we'll move into the land acknowledgement. And at this time, we would like to acknowledge the treaty lands and the territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous peoples today. So welcome everyone. And we're at question period, and this is sort of pre-designed. We do have some folks here that would like to talk about noise. Mr. Vipon, did you want to come up to the microphone for a minute? We have the inspector online, and then we also have our bylaw department here today. And I think there's just been some ongoing concerns about noise in our community. And Gary, I don't want to put, excuse me, Mr. Vipon, I don't want to put comments into you, but I understand it's modified mufflers is continuing to be the main concern in terms of noise. Did you want to speak to that a little bit? And then we can have the inspector and our bylaw team.
Sure. Is the inspector online, did you say?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have the TVs hooked up, but he is online.
That's okay.
He can hear everything that you're saying right now.
Yeah.
Are you able to hook them up, Mona? Okay, great.
Well, my first comment was to thank him.
Oh, great.
Michael, because he and James Bramley, met with me on a Zoom and gave me an extraordinary amount of time to discuss the problem. He mentioned almost immediately that he's aware of the problem, even though he's new, because it's occurring in his community where he lives, and he's disgruntled with it. But anyway, I just wanted the police board to know that when we spoke on that Zoom meeting, I presented basically 2 things. And if I could just take a minute to explain that. And I gave a copy of this to Inspector. There have been 2 ads run by the OPP in the paper about a year apart. They were about 6 inches by 6 inches. They were labeled Quiet Running, and it was an initiative for the OPP, and that's how it was stated. When I pursued the first one and went to the office on Sea Line, I was greeted and I said, I'm really interested in this new Quiet Running, and I hope it's successful, and I'd just like to talk about it. He said, well, I don't know anything about that. And he asked for a copy, and it became a non-issue at that point. And I thought that's strange, and then nothing happened. And about a year later, I'm guessing at the actual time, Quiet Running ad came out again, almost the same one. And since that time, in any posting in their 9/11 column in the paper, there's been no mention of any citation whatsoever. And I find that strange. And he apologized for that on behalf of the OPP, and but was very interested in it. And so we've had no feedback on 2 Quiet Running initiatives by the OPP. And I find that, as a person concerned about noisy running, to be very strange. But anyway, so we had a good discussion. And he realizes there is a problem. He realizes it's not just rumbling of motors. It's become fearful for some people. And I presented to the police board last year, or whenever I was here before, a letter basically from a husband and wife at Zina and Clara, who were out riding their bikes, and she was so frightened by a backfire right in her, the car was right next to her. She fell off her bike. And the response of the kid driving was the F word plus, and just drove on. It's also fearful in a way that we want to help as citizens. We want to get a license, get a description of a car. But if you, and it has happened, I think, to Winston, who is right behind me, took a photograph or was taking a photograph, the car stopped, and then there's a verbal accosting, which could lead to just about anything. So anyway, these are some of the things I talked over with Michael DiPasquale. And we had a good talk. And I mentioned to him also a man that I admire in The Citizen. I don't know whether you've read his columns.
Anthony?
Mr. Carnevale.
He's an
And
amazing
he also
writer.
teaches writing in town. But the end of his article, where he talks about cars raging, not racing, but raging down Broadway pretty well every night, he ends up by saying, I'm not asking for complete silence. I'm asking for a certain level of respect to be shown to the citizens. And basically, I think that's what we're about. When I say we, just anybody I talk to or whatever that is disturbed. And I noticed somebody presented this to me today from Mono, noise bylaw. They're having a survey on that. So it can be done. And I'm hoping that in some way we will get a reaction which will show us that there is going to be some action, and we'll get feedback on it in some way. Certainly it hasn't come through the paper. This is a screenshot, by the way. My wife noticed it. It's London Police Force in London, Ontario. In 2020, the city's police laid 110 charges for noisy mufflers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it can be done. Now, the only thing that I guess, as I talk to people, that would be nice is just to know there is a plan, to know there is action.
Yeah, understood. So there's a couple of things to unpack there in that statement. So there is an OPP program. Michael, when we were talking last to your previous, the previous inspector, there was stats that were delivered off of that program. You haven't seen those, or you're just not familiar with that program? Is that
correct? Project Running, it's not something that I've heard of before, and so I couldn't speak to the stats that would have been provided. Sorry.
No, it's not a problem at all. It's not a court. It's a group of people trying to get through. So I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did the program run this year then, or no? They advertised it, but it was a mistake, or are they running one?
So I know nothing, and when I spoke with our media folks at the detachment, they didn't release anything about this particular operation this past year. And we do have Project Erase, which is eliminate street racing activity everywhere. And so that is a provincial-wide campaign that takes part right across Ontario with certain police services, and the OPP is a partnering agency in that, along with the Ministry of Transportation. But otherwise, I wasn't familiar with it until Mr. Vipond educated me.
Okay. What would the OPP like the citizens to do regarding noise? How can we help you and your detachment with this, specifically noisy vehicles?
Great question. First of all, what I'll start by saying is what we have done. So we have provided direction to our officers as part of their daily patrol duties to focus their attention as well on illegally modified vehicles. As you know, the big four causal factors are something that our officers are always out on patrol looking for. So that takes care of the aggressive driving piece, which is something we are always doing. But over the summer period, or as we entered the summer period, they were provided with further direction with the explanation about why it's important, because the sound does impact the quality of life of our residents across the county. And so we provided them with some additional training and materials to help them better understand the legislation as it supports illegally modified enforcement. The other thing that we are doing as well is looking at partnering with the Ministry of Transportation to do some joint initiatives. We're going to target illegally modified vehicles, again, with loud mufflers, but other modifications, illegal modifications that make street racing or those types of vehicles illegal, unlawful, and quite frankly, unsafe for everybody on the road. And finally, we do have our media relations people that are looking at developing some more content specifically about the issues to help educate and inform our community of the dangers, particularly those that decide that they want to modify their vehicle. Unfortunately, it's quite easy to modify your vehicle. You can get a modified muffler. You can lower your suspension. You can modify the engine or what have you. And therein lies the problem. So in terms of a solution for our community, we can't do this without them. So we would ask for their time and their attention to use things like our online reporting tool, or to call the non-emergency number and to report locations, times of day, days of the week. And if they can't provide a description of the vehicle including license plate, so that our officers that are in the patrolling the area can make a visible effort of not only deterring, but apprehending those vehicles, and also letting our community know that we hear their concerns and that we're being responsive to their needs.
Very good. Board members, any questions or comments for Inspector?
Just wondering, Mike, I know you're going to get to your stats report. Just wondering whether you keep separate stats for the charging of these kinds of offenses.
We don't collect the stats, but as I had indicated to Mr. Vipond, it's actually a good opportunity for us to do better for our community. And so we can look at developing, again, part of that key messaging and providing those stats to the public so they know that we're listening to them and that we're doing our best, and we continue to do our best with that directed type of enforcement.
I mean, I think that's important. I mean, it's keeping the stats is not going to improve behavior on our roads, but at least it's a way for the public and the rest of us to monitor progress and sanctioning that kind of action.
Member McSweeney, if I may, just
I
need
agree.
to fix your screen.
Oh,
Your screen. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree, sir. It is a way of determining progress, but I think there's probably more to it than that. It certainly shows that we're paying attention to it. I mean, we are paying attention to it, equipment offenses and the like. But the other part is obviously bylaw. We can collaborate with them, and the bylaw team can use their mechanisms to help create a quieter environment. But the challenge is it's quite easy for you to get your vehicle modified, unfortunately.
Yeah. We have bylaw here. Mr. Vipond, did you want to just share the microphone with our bylaw team? And do you want to come up and we'll just quickly chat about what is it that the town can do? Yeah, what is it that the town can do in regards to this from a bylaw perspective? And if I may, I just want to lead you down the garden path for a minute. bylaw can't necessarily pull over vehicles or put themselves at harm's way in terms of, interfering with a car that is proceeding. That is a police matter. But what would you like the public to do, and what can bylaw do in regards to noisy vehicles and modified mufflers?
Thank you for that. And you're correct. We can't go and, again, pull cars over. Our authorities lie primarily on private property. And we have amended our noise bylaw to address noise coming from modified mufflers. And we do address modified mufflers and engines within our bylaw itself. Our function and what we request from the public to be able to accommodate and address all the concerns that are being brought forward, because we are aware that noisy mufflers, loud cars are a prevailing issue that are happening not just here but everywhere else in other municipalities, to use our online portal to provide us with these complaints. And what our policy and what we do for our investigations is we don't have a very large force. We ask that the residents, the complainants, provide a 2-week log, generally when the noise is happening, details. We're not asking you to intervene or interact with the individuals with these large mufflers or noisy mufflers, but just let us know the address and where they're happening, generally when this is happening, and give us a timeline so we can then review this. And that's the way we're going to be able to pursue it. We can provide an education, we can provide notices to cease activity or notice a violation that something is happening. As we don't have the large force to go proactively look for this, we definitely rely on the residents to provide this information for us to address what's happening solely on private property, as that's, again, where authority takes place.
Very good. No, board members, any further commentary or questions?
Yeah, I'm going to let this go, but I want to test it again. So from the public comments, it's clear that we know generally the streets that this is occurring on with the most frequency. I'm just wondering, Mike, whether, and I don't know what the end result was of your discussions with Mr. Vipon, but just wondering whether there can be increased police presence on those streets for a start at the times of day when this kind of activity seems to be going on. To just pull some of these guys over and ticket them. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I know that you do that, but I'm just wondering whether there's any way of increasing that to send a message.
Well, like I said, and I think you've said as well, we are doing that. We need our public to help us out. I mean, our officers are on patrol. They can clearly see vehicles that are modified, and they can make those vehicle stops. And we need the public's help to identify the times of the day, days of the week, and the locations. And then when I've got that information, I can communicate through our leadership team to our officers to pinpoint those particular intersections, those particular areas. As a start, we can look at Zina and Clara if we've got some specific times and days of the week. If Mr. Vipond or anyone in the community want to help us out, we will certainly look at putting a car there pending calls for service or doing additional enforcement. Again, even if the public sees the police car, it at least shows that we're being responsive to their needs. And we're obviously going to do everything we can to support that. So in terms of the ticketing as well, we allow the officers to use their discretion. There may be a reason why we charge or we don't charge, but certainly we want to look at every traffic stop as an opportunity to educate.
Very good. Mr. Vipon, do you feel like you were heard today? Is there other things on your mind? And how did you want to end with this as respectfully as I can ask the question?
Well, it started with the meeting with Michael and I have been heard.
That's wonderful.
I know Michael is disturbed about noisy cars where he lives. And I know everybody on council doesn't appreciate muffler, noisy cars, kids that have modified, kids that race and do wheelies on the school lots in the weekend and this sort of thing. And so I think everybody wants to work at this. And I think if we're really in that mood, we can do something about it. And I'll be any part of that I can be. But as I mentioned, if you're a citizen and you start to be the person who is reporting, as the McDonald's were before they're knocked off their bikes, you're in for it in a way. So I think it is a police business thing, but would do anything it can to help. But I think we can't let the culture. I worked on a large book called The Culture, basically, of Orangeville, and it was wonderful to work at. And it was a nice town, but now I think our culture is changing, because I think the people are not necessarily here because it's a delightful place to live. They're here because it's the best place they can buy, and it's commutable. And Shelburne is growing at a great rate. We're growing at a great rate. So anyway, I think we got to do it. Don't lose the culture of Orangeville.
Well, don't lose your faith either. There's groups here that are listening, and there's groups that want to do things about it. Winston, I saw, did you want to come up to the microphone, sir, and share your thoughts? Thank you very much, Mr. Vipon.
My name's Winston Newton Bogart, and I live at the corner of Elizabeth. Well, basically, we're mid-block between between Elizabeth and Zina on Clara. So what we see every day is what Mr. Vipon has addressed. I'm part of the neighborhood group that got together. And I will, number one, I wanted to say, when we first brought this problem forward, for about 2 weeks, we did have police visitation on our street. In fact, they parked in my driveway. And we had a noticeable decrease because for part of the year, the problem is younger folks that are going to the high school. And believe it or not, it's noon hour. They rush out and they sprint across our short section of street as if it's a drag strip, and they deliberately back off, and that's when the things are popping and making lots of noise. And then about an hour later, they're going back the other way. And then again, you see it in the schools getting out in the afternoon. But there are another series of cars which are from the neighborhood, and it's as Mr. Vipon mentioned, there's some type of lack of social understanding of community and what it means to live in a community that exists now, I think, since we moved here just 11 years ago. And it's like I can do what I want when I want, and I don't care what noise I create or what other problems we have, because as a side issue, the racing on our street, you have to see it to believe it. And it's not only sometimes, and there are cars that do not have modified mufflers, but they've done something else to the car and or their stick shifts, and they can race the engine and then they back off. I mean, I did it when I was a kid too, but out in the country. I lived in Malton when it was Malton and there was lots of country, and that's where we went. Anyway, so I just wanted to make mention that there wasn't a presence in the beginning, and it made a difference. The problem is continuing, and I wanted to confirm with Mr. Vipon that I think it's a type of social issue. I thought the idea of having regular notices in the paper that the community is concerned about it might bring it to the attention of more thinking people who would also say, yes, that's what we want. So, and holiday weekends, I mean, thinking about what time of the day, where holiday weekends, I can guarantee it'll be going 24 hours a day almost in our neighborhood, because it is, unfortunately, it is a bypass for most of Broadway and the lights on Broadway. People come up Elizabeth, go across Clara, jump back onto Broadway and then leave town. But from there on out too, we can hear them. So
Very good. Well, I think the inspector's listening and has made his notes, so I'm sure we'll see something happen here. We won't, I know. the
Yeah, no,
inspector
thank you.
won't announce what that is, but you know, the element of surprise needs to be taken into account, right?
I would just
Oh,
like
thanks
to
for that. Yeah, no,
Go ahead,
I
Inspector.
just wanted to push that also that in addition to the noise, there's another factor that connects with it, and that is rolling right, like, they don't even roll sometimes. They just glide right through the whole corner. And so there's a number of issues, the noise being the big one for us, and then the other factors that follow from their actions and attitudes.
Stop signs.
And thank you for considering these.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Inspector, I'm sorry, we both cut you off. Please go ahead.
well, that's okay. I was writing down some of those street names. So what I will do is send out a message to the detachment to say, for the officers that are patrolling the town of Orangeville, pay particular attention to these intersections in this particular area. And if what I'm hearing you say, sir, is that it's all times of the day, but are there maybe specific times? Like, I can't promise to put a car there all the time. We've got officers that are responding to different calls for service, and we've got other priorities of the community. So if I've got more specific times, then I can be more specific with the instructions.
We understand. Okay. Is there anyone else in the gallery who'd like to speak to this item? Yes, please come
Sorry,
forward.
sir, that was a question to the gentleman. Is there a particular time that you wanted us to focus on, like hours of darkness or?
Winston, I think you basically said it's noon hour, right? Is kind of the,
It's noon hour and then in evenings, like when school gets out till 7 o'clock.
yeah.
In the summer months on Saturdays, Friday nights, Saturdays, Sundays.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Yes, please, sir. Come forward and just, if you could just state your name and address and,
Here. I'd like to add just a little bit, I think, to what Winston said. We've only been here a couple of years. We're at the corner of Zina and Clara. And I find it not only at certain hours, I find it many times during the day, the weekends and everything else. I think Winston was right when he talked, it's a bypass. We hear the cars. I'm concerned. My granddaughter attends public school right at the corner of Elizabeth and Clara. And you don't make some of that noise without going faster. So I'm concerned not only about the noise, but about security and safety and people running through stop signs. I don't know what the answer is, but we certainly have we have a lovely back garden that we love to sit in, but it gets pretty noisy sometimes. On the weekend, we'd like to enjoy it. Somebody mentioned something in the paper. I don't know if signage does it. I'm not sure what would happen, but certainly we'd like to see it a little quieter there, and I'm sure my neighbors would as well. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
very good. Thank you, sir. Any other further questions? Yeah, please, can you come to the microphone? Okay.
My name is
Mayor
Jan.
Postis, while we're waiting for that, I'll let you weigh in last if that's okay.
Sure, no problem.
At the corner of Spencer and Riddell, where the McDonald's is, that starts around Thursday nights at around 10. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and now that school's out, it'll be more from 10 till around 2 in the morning. There's speeding cars and revving till they backfire. So that's just a corner to keep in mind.
Yep, very good.
Yep.
Thank you very much. The inspector's nodding his head, so thank you for that. Mayor Post, you have the
Just
floor.
writing that down.
Go ahead. Lisa.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank everybody for being here today and sharing these concerns again. And outside of the noise issue, I just also, from a council perspective, wanted to let everybody who's in the gallery know that from a council perspective, we're looking at these areas as well. We recently did speed checks on Elizabeth and Zina at the farther west side, though. And those came back, surprisingly, I was surprised to see the results that there was not a speeding problem in that area. There were definitely one-offs where they were speeding, but when you looked at all the results that came back from those as a whole, there really wasn't a speeding issue identified in the west part of those streets. When those reports came forward to council, we did ask Infrastructure Services at the time to move those speed readers down west a little bit to see if it's different on different sides of the street, because we do know, and we talked about it, I know Deputy Mayor and I talked about it a lot through the campaign, is that those two streets, Zina and Elizabeth, are often used as bypasses to Broadway. And because of that, you do tend to get additional traffic and, you know, different types of traffic that are going there. Oftentimes people in a hurry to get somewhere else and they're cutting through. So we do know that there's an issue there. And at the town of Orangeville, we do have a traffic calming policy in place. So once we have data that shows what the problem is, we do have implementation things that we can do. So we're just waiting. We're still in a data collection phase from the speeding side. That doesn't address the noise, but from the speeding side, we are continuing to look at that as well. So I just wanted to ease everybody's mind that those streets are not forgotten. We definitely know that there's issues, and we want to look at what the most appropriate traffic calming measures are going to be in those places based on the data that we receive.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
I think that's a great comment. And since there was a Spencer comment, without details, there is things being looked at for that street as well. More to come, but we'll see. And the third one that we always hear about is Cedar Drive, but no one's here tonight talking about it. And same thing, the data came back on Cedar Drive and said it wasn't an issue. So, I mean, we still need to watch and see what's happening as we go forward. But thank you for your comments, Mayor Post. Okay, I think it's time to move on. No further questions at this time. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Appreciate it very much. And I know the inspector has made the appropriate notes here, and those on council and the Police Services Board will do the same. Okay, thank you, everyone. Yeah, you can hang out with us if you'd like. So there's no presentations. We've already chatted about the in-camera session, and so we are on to items for discussion and reports, and that means that it's 11.1, and I hand it back to you, Inspector. Did you want to do your board review and discussion?
Yes, please.
Floor is yours.
2-month period.
Yeah.
Floor is mine, the virtual floor. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure again to be here with you virtually to talk about our 2-month period in 2024. So I'll just start with the beginning, no public complaints during this period. Going through the calls for service billing summary report, if subject to any questions or concerns that anybody may have, fairly straightforward, but draw your attention to the violent crime first, looking at April to May 2023 to 2024. We did have a 23.7% reduction. Mr. Armstrong, sorry, your hand's up if you wanted to ask a question before I go any further. You're muted, sir. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I forgot about that button. I can wait till you're done. I just wanted to ask a couple lines on the operational. So you let me know if you want to do it now or I can wait.
Oh, you can. Yeah, you can ask now for sure. Go ahead. What can I help you with?
Just noticing a relatively sharp increase in the domestic disturbance and suspicion person lines. Is that, are you from what you know of Central Region, is that a consistent across the region? Is that, or is that something that's a little standoutish here? I see it. It's about anywhere from a 10 to 12% increase year over year.
Okay, sorry. Are you looking at the billing summary report?
Yes.
Okay, what page are you looking at, sir?
It would be page 5 of 8 under the operational domestic disturbance and suspicious person.
Just going through that.
Those are very. I mean, I know council and the town are very aware of those and the activities, but is that normal for what you're seeing across Central Region? Is that higher than the increase year
I
over
see
year?
what you're saying. So I can't speak to whether it's what it's comparable like in Central Region or at other detachments, but yeah, there were 146 domestic occurrences from January to May. It takes a time standard of 3.8 hours per investigation. Those domestic disturbances could be anything from a domestic disturbance where the accused isn't present, could be child custody related. It could be something in relation to someone violating their bail conditions. But unfortunately, I can't speak to what it's like comparably against other detachments.
If you're able to, for our next September, anecdotally even provide any commentary, it's more of a to see if that's a trend or if that's a one-off.
Okay, yeah, and I certainly could. I just need to go to our
Yeah,
operational
no rush.
analyst
Like
and
next meeting's fine.
Yeah.
September's fine.
maybe if you can flag that for me in advance, and I can ask our regional operational analyst. So
I'll send you an email if that's okay, and then we can just add it in later. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. And so, yeah, back to the violent crime. So we did see a 23.7% decrease. Property crime, a 38% decrease. Pretty significant decrease in break-in enters, 71%. So we had 7 in that period of time in 2023 compared to 2 in 2024. And so kudos to the great work of all of our officers, but particularly our community street crime unit for the work that they're doing. And drug offenses also down 75% compared to last year this time. Sir, sorry, Mr. Armstrong, you still have your hand up. Did you have a question or is that just there? Okay, I'll double check. No problem before I move along. Looking at our clearance rates. So there is overall a slight decrease in the clearance rates compared to last year this time. And I would be curious to look more into specifically the violent crime decrease in clearance. Perhaps it's something in relation to data quality. Moving along to our charges for criminal code, traffic, non-traffic, other and criminal code provincial statutes. Those are numbers right across the county. And on to our foot patrol hours. 158 hours of foot patrol. Again, our officers are doing a foot patrol, particularly in the downtown core, to increase visibility and engagement with members of the community. 170 hours of ride. 32 occurrences related to trouble with youth and mental health occurrences. 68 occurrences in April and 78 occurrences in May. And that is something where our mobile crisis response team is obviously engaged in providing support to members of our community who have an emotional crisis or persons in crisis, rather, to support them into getting the help that they need. We're 14 year-to-date impaired by alcohol occurrences, 2 in April, 1 in May. We have not had any impaired by drug occurrences. And of course, ride grant vehicles checked doesn't apply for typically this time of the year. Distracted driving charges, 2 year-to-date. And in regards to our traffic management, our continued efforts at that, we had the Easter weekend campaign, the end of April, Canada Road Safety Week in mid-May, and Dufferin Detachment placed top 3 in the detachments within Central Region when it came to our traffic stops and the number of statistics that we generated. And we are presently in the Canada Day long week provincial traffic safety campaign. So the focus is on seatbelts and motorcycle equipment and PDFs. So our officers will be looking out for the big 4 causal factors with an emphasis on people that aren't wearing their seatbelts or using their safety equipment properly. Auxiliary units still very much involved in our community with 74.5 hours of community policing, 57 hours of training in April, 43 hours in administration. Unfortunately, I don't have stats for May or June in that report as well, but subject to any other questions that anyone may have.
Board members, any other further thoughts? Yeah, I think the call out on mental health is of great interest, and there's plenty of things that are going on from an OPP perspective, from a county perspective. So thankfully, there's services there for folks, and hopefully they're able to get them. But I thought that was telling for sure. So thank you very much for your report, Inspector.
Thank you.
Motion to receive the report. Grant? Ian, all in favor? Yes. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so item 11.2 is the OPP Detachment Board Annual Report to Town Council, and this report is a necessity that the OPP Detachment Board must do as part of our obligation to the legislation. And that report was given to Council last night. It was a wonderful report delivered by yourself, Grant, and thank you very much for doing that. And my impression is that we got full buy-in from council. It felt like we were partners with the council, and I felt quite optimistic about how that whole evening went down. So anyway, if there's any comments or questions from board members, anything you'd like to discuss regarding that. Otherwise, I think it's just a motion to receive the documentation and close off an obligation that we had. Member McSweeney, do you want to speak to that item?
Yeah, so I echo your sentiments about council's reaction last night. I think what we need to do is, and happy to do this in public session, is to approve the annual report as presented. Finalize it to the extent that it's marked draft, and I don't know if there's any comments or nits and picks that we need to make. It needs to be dated, and then submit it to council by June 30th.
So just as a background to that, so the question is very appropriate. We have had special meetings on this, work sessions on this. It felt like we got to the point where we were ready for that meeting for council, and we were going to take that feedback and incorporate it in the document. We only received positive feedback, so my interpretation would be is that we're good and we're ready to go, unless there's some sort of last minute change that board members would like. Grant shaking his head no. It looks like Mayor Post is doing the same. So it feels like we're ready to pass it. So did you want to make that motion?
I will. So Mary Lou, the effective date should be June 30th. So we can put that in. Todd and I are already showing us. So the watermark needs to be removed, and then it can be submitted. I'm not sure where we landed as far as the appendices and tabs. The tab one is fine. The appendices in council's hands, will they be hyperlinks or will they be hard copies?
They'll be hyperlinks just
Okay.
as they are in the document now. They'll be able to access all the reports using the hyperlinks.
Perfect. So when you send that to council, if you could copy me on it. Lisa Darling, the executive director of the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards, and I were talking earlier today, and I'll report a bit more on that later. But she's expressed an interest in putting this annual plan up on the website as a precedent.
Oh, wow.
So
great.
and in addition to all of our governance materials, but especially this, since some boards are a little bit at sea as to a format or content and what they should do. So I think anything we can provide to the OAPSB by way of precedent will be posted and then will be disseminated to a wider group of boards.
Wonderful. Okay, and just as an action plan, make sure I understand, Mary Lou, you'll send that with a CC to board members and to council. I think we should also put the CAO on it and the clerk. Mayor Post, are you aligned with that, or do you? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Good. And the clerk. I think you can just put clerk's department, or it's clerks. If not, it's Raylene. That's great.
And just on that the point that Grant mentioned to council last night about the ministry considering extending the deadline from June 30, 2024 to 2025, I suspect they will extend the deadline. It may be extended after the deadline, but in any event, we've filed on the current deadline by the deadline, so I think we're fine.
It's wonderful. Okay. So we need a motion to that effect that we are going to send the documentation and there is no further changes to the document. Member McSweeney, Grant, all in favor? Yes, okay, thank you very much. 11.3, this is the service standards guidelines. I don't know here. To me, we were going to review the work plan. Is this still, Member McSweeney, is this still necessary to do given what we just did in 11.2, or how do you feel about? Yep, sorry.
This is the matter we talked about just before the meeting about assigning to.
Oh, right. Yeah. So this is our general work plan. It talks about our tactics and initiatives that we've got ongoing. And it would be good, Grant, unfortunately, you're the only one here of the new members at this point, if we could have a second set of eyes on that action plan, and wondering if that would be something that you would be interested in taking on, and with the idea of being critical, right? Not being kind, being critical, and making sure that the document sang and made sense to you with your fresh set of eyes, and give it a rip and make sure that we're being clear and concise and we're on the right path. And if Jacqueline or Warren wanted to join, that would be great too, but I don't want to volunteer somebody who's not here. Would you be willing to take that task on?
Yeah, for clarification, it's the Board General Service Standards Guideline?
Yes.
I've read it. I mean, it looks good, but I'm happy to take another more critical look at it and
Okay.
And report back.
And more specifically, the appendix attached to it, which is kind of our working template to keep ourselves on track. It would be, when Todd and I were talking about it earlier, we thought it would be a great way for the new members to dig in to the framework, the governance framework, test it against these service standards and the work plan that we've developed, and then come back with, as Todd said, a fresh set of eyes, having looked at it and made comments on it. So there's no pride of authorship at all. And the drafting, just have at it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I am happy to do that. Is there a timeline?
Well, our next meeting isn't until September, so I think maybe we could put it on the agenda for that time. So, you've got 60 days essentially.
Excellent. I do believe it's in PDF. If I could ask Mary Lou if you could send me a Word document or it's in PDF now, that'd be easier for me to edit.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor that we have Grant lead that project and that he'll report back at the September meeting. I have that motion. Grant, you'll make it, and Ian, you'll second. You wanted to talk further about this?
No, I just was wondering, we do have the ability to make a committee. So should we make this, we don't have to. Should we make this a committee or should we just leave it informal?
My recommendation, just given, I mean, you've got 2 or 3 new people, if I need some support, I'll reach out to the other new members for a second set of eyes. But I think as the couple of months coming up and travel, vacations, trying to formalize it in committee might delay the process. So happy to lead it and engage my partners if they need it.
That's great. Okay. Sorry, did we get the motion, Mary Lou, or no? Okay.
Can you turn your mic on, Mary Lou, so I can hear what the motion was? Sorry.
Sorry, the motion was that Grant will review the work plan and the appendix, and with his critical eye, and report back to the board September 17th, which is our next meeting. And if he requires any assistance, he will reach out to other board members.
Perfect. Thank you.
New board members. Okay, that's great. We were all in favor there, Mary Lou, sorry. We were good? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. 11.5 is insurance coverage. Really nice blurb on insurance on page 45 in the material. Member McSweeney, do you want to speak to this a little bit and talk about the uncovering of it all?
So just by way of background, this was a glitch in the legislation, caused by a glitch in the legislation. When the new act came in and the companion legislation like the Municipal Act were amended, the result of that is that whereas previous under the PSA, the board was a police services board and was a local board as far as the municipality was concerned. The way the definitions work after April 1st, OPP detachment boards no longer come within the definition of local boards. So we're no longer covered under the municipality's insurance arrangements. So boards, and this is province-wide, OPP detachment boards are not covered by any insurance. And, you know, it is a concern, and I'll get to that in a sec, but the relieving provisions under the Act provide some comfort. Under the Act, board members are protected against litigation, being sued for their acts as board members as individuals. The board, however, under the Act expressly remains responsible for the acts of individual board members, and so that the board can clearly be sued by anyone who has a beef against an act that an individual member may have committed or an omission. The board has no assets, so in a way, you know, the board kind of looks like it's judgment proof. But as we all know, one of the highest costs of being involved in litigation normally are legal fees. And so what boards would find themselves faced with if they were named as a defendant in a lawsuit is, you know, yes, they could rely on the provisions of the statute to make sure members were protected, but that doesn't prevent them from being sued. There's lots of frivolous actions out there, and they would want to hire lawyers to protect their legal interests, and those legal costs would then have to be paid by the municipality, and the municipality would like to continue to enjoy the protection afforded by its own insurance policies for this kind of thing as it's traditionally done. So that's a statement of the problem. The insurance industry has clearly indicated that insuring OPP detachment boards as things now stand is not within its risk appetite. However, Lisa Darling and the OAPSB have been talking to the insurance industry and have been, I don't know to what extent they've been talking to the government, but they have managed to, Lisa says they're about 3 weeks away from developing a product that would be rolled out through insurance brokers, and would be available to purchase by OPP detachment boards. So it's great news. I'm not quite sure how the risk is being described to the underwriters. Maybe we don't really care, but it's more a risk, I think, for the protection for legal fees. That's what in my view, it comes down to. But it's great because it's always difficult to appoint people to boards and then tell them they have no insurance. And so this will at least cure that. So within about 3 or 4 weeks' time, I think Lisa will reach out to OPP detachment boards, and then we'll be able to contact an insurance broker of our choice, and there will be a product available for us to buy.
Very good.
So great work.
Thank you very much for that, Ian. Any comments or questions for Member McSweeney? No, seeing none. Can I have a motion to receive that report? Grant and Lisa, thank you. All in favor? Yes. Okay, so we're on to 11. I'm sorry, we did. Thank you very much. 11.4, we missed her because she's not here. She wasn't top of mind for me. So 11.4 is the notice that we received from the province regarding the appointment of our new member, the provincial appointee, who is Jacqueline Weatherby. So Jacqueline will be with us for a period of 2 years. So congratulations to Jacqueline, and we look forward to working with you. So I think board members, all we need to do is receive the report. It's on page 39. Could I have a motion to do so, please? Grant and Ian, all in favor? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mary Lou. So 11.6, which is the board member executive assistant claims for special remuneration. It's on page 53. The remuneration claims are for $1,300. Just as a reminder, our board secretary, executive assistant, excuse me, also is a prolific grant writer and has done some wonderful things for this board and for our town. And that is why those claims are submitted in the way that they are. So at this time, asking for a motion to receive this and approve.
Could I just make a comment before we make the motion? So
Yes, please.
our intention is to build a lot of transparency around this, and our policy for payment of these kinds of claims is very robust and also requires a periodic reporting throughout the year in summary form of where we are to date in terms of how much has been claimed and identification of who's claiming what, board approval in order for those claims to be paid, to be submitted to the town and paid. And just as to Mary Lou, I think if it would be, I think our agenda should be structured so that whenever we do claims, they're itemized. So itemized by maybe by person. I'm not sure in months, you and I, we can talk about this when we draft the agendas, but I think it's helpful in the interest of transparency to identify who's getting paid what. The claims I know are part of the materials, but even in the agenda, it's just helpful to eyeball that, you know, McSweeney gets paid X and Todd gets paid Y, and then your invoices are for another amount rather than just the total.
Very good. Okay. Any other further comments or questions? No? Motion to receive and approve this report. Grant, thank you. Lisa, thank you. All in favor? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Item 11.7, which is the meeting service standards for the for our overall meeting minutes and whatnot. So it's the pre-June 25th, and this is where we describe the events that we do and the dates and the commitments to each other as we get ready for the meeting. I think we did fairly well. Mary Lou, would you suggest? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any? Yeah, it might have been driven by me, was it? Might have been a day late. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out in public forum. Can we have a motion to receive this report? Grant? Thank you. Ian? Thank you. All in favor? Yes. Okay. OPP Detachment Board financials for Q1. This is just a general look. We're going to see this quarterly as we go through the year. And if I could, just a little bit of an explanation. This report used to be done with a significant amount of rigor. And I'm not suggesting that this wasn't either, but the rigor was driven by the Police Services Board because we had legal fees, and it was just a much more involved financial commitment from the board as well. You know, a significant legal bill. Now all those legal bills are covered by the OPP. We still kept a small amount because we just didn't know what we didn't know. So if you look at the top portion of the financials, I would say that we probably did quite well. We're relatively on pace, 25% of the way through the year, and I think we're 21% on the financials. So relatively on pace to what we thought. The bottom portion of that report, I think it's something we're going to have to let play out. It's not significant money by any stretch, but at the same time, we didn't know what we didn't know. And we need to have a discussion in sort of Q3 timeframe so that we can submit to the treasurer for the budget. Actually, we're going to have to talk about it in September because we'll need to make sure that we submit to the treasurer and offer our opinions on what we want that budget to be. Anyway, that's my diatribe. Is there any other comments or questions? Matt, please go ahead.
We previously spoke about insurance and the fact that we're going to have to look for insurance, but I don't see line items on here to cover insurance. So is that by design? Is that just
so we didn't know, like back to that previous report, we didn't know that we needed that. And I guess that is going to come in, and it could put us in an overspend depending upon what that bill is. Okay, but
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we were the detachment boards generally didn't realize this was an issue until pretty close to March. And then there was a bunch of discussion. So yeah, so it's not in there.
There is some room in case, like you can see the bottom part of that, those financials are relatively open at this point, so we could. I think it would be important to overspend the insurance line and then hopefully we balance out total bottom rate for the year.
And Todd, the line, the salary line, the 2 million. I've moved the decimal point.
Yeah.
2,000.
So I can't see it, guys. I apologize because
it's
I'm
really,
having computer issues, but
it's 2,000.
I thought I saw that the budget for the year, like what's the budget for the year on that item? Is it 52,000?
52,000. Oh,
Not bad, eh, from
thought that
memory.
was- okay.
And I think we're tracking at 21%. Is that the number?
Yep.
Hey, there we go. So that's why I would say I think we're relatively on track. So at that point, 25% of the year passed, but we weren't a full board, right? So we would have lost, we didn't have the full component of people, which could equal to why we're behind somewhat.
Okay, and then we revisit this budgeting process again in November, so.
No, we'll need to do it before that because the municipal team will be putting forward their budgets and presenting to council prior to that. So we're going to want to weigh in so that we can have the roll up. So it'll need to be on the September agenda.
Okay, so we need to make sure that happens. I don't think we have that correctly identified then on the work plan. I think it's slotted for November. So you found your first critical point.
Yeah, you know what?
I need new glasses.
In fairness, it is a November discussion, but it's a November discussion of a different group, right? We would need to be ahead of that group, the group being council.
So is the expectation in September for us to do the work and make a recommendation then, or do we need to be, in order to hit the November, do we need to be approving or making, or not approving, but submitting our recommendation in September?
Yeah, you're right. It's going to have to be a sub committee meeting, isn't it?
Probably a special meeting.
Special to get ready for the council meeting and have that relating to what the budget would be. I think the budget for our board will be quite straightforward. There's just some debate required in those bottom 4 or 5 buckets and whether or not we've got it allocated correctly, and insurance will be one of them.
Yeah. So there'll be work done ahead of that public meeting. I mean, we could also just schedule it for the public meeting, discuss it, and if we can't approve it in that public meeting, then we could have a special meeting to do it and then report back in public. So that our next meeting.
Just to carry on with that, if we did that, we would have to have something to react to, which means would that be the chair who would put something like that together? I'm fine if that's the case.
I think so. I think that, I mean, this budget then goes to council for approval.
Think about it. Whatever I put forward to the board, it almost just needs to be a C document, because what you want to do is have it for reaction and discussion, and then it would become an A document post the September meeting. Okay. So as part of my feedback to you, as we're doing the board prep, I need to make sure that I've got a budget prepared.
But I think, I mean, 65% of the budget should be easily predetermined.
That's what
we have X number of meetings and then we pre-schedule.
I don't think it's rocket science.
Yeah.
Together. It's just a matter of remembering to do it. Like, I don't think it's a big exercise by any stretch.
And the current actual for the year to date will inform us on which line items perhaps need to be bumped up and which need to be
the
adjusted.
Other thing to keep in mind is we have an extra board member, right? And perhaps a different mindset of board members. So they may want additional training or those types of things, right? Okay.
Question, if you don't mind, is the relation between council, town council and board, is this an ask to council for them to approve, or is this a slotted out amount that they send down? Like, is it us asking and they determining whether it fits into the master budget, or is the town coming and saying, you've got X number of dollars to make it work for next year.
If we had a significant ask,
Yeah.
you know, it would be considered for sure. I don't know that we would though, right? Because an ask would be, you know, infrastructure or an extra member or what have you. I think it's going to be a very fact-based, this is the bare bones of what we need.
But you'll see, I mean, this was actually anticipated in the legislation, particularly for detachment boards that have multiple municipalities involved, and the budgeting and allocation of costs is a more complex discussion. But the Act provides for all of it and says that the board has to submit a budget to council, and if there's any disagreement, there's arbitration provisions, and so there's a whole kind of process that we will never ever use that's built into the Act. But I think it's really clear that the town is responsible for paying, and then there's this process whereby they agree as to exactly what the amount is that they're required to pay through the board budgeting process.
The previous board that we were involved in, the budget was approximately $9 million at the time. I'm making that up. We were accountable for that. We wrote that budget in conjunction with the OPS, and then that was brought to council for discussion.
So slightly off topic to this budget, but maybe this is the question. So now that the town council has got a billing arrangement for the OPP, is this board responsible for ensuring that, or is that outside of the purview?
So we have a contract with the OPP that's totally separate.
Yeah.
Ian, can you turn on your mic? I have no idea what you're saying.
So the Act is very prescriptive on that as well. The Act prescribes the process by which the municipality sets the costs, and the OPP will set the costs that the town's responsible for paying for the police service. So, and we're not involved in that.
Okay. So for this one, what we've determined is that Chair Taylor will put together a budget for the board to react to at our September meeting. That'll be part of the prep work that I do leading into that meeting. Okay, that's the motion. Can I have somebody move that? Grant will move that. Ian will second it. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Okay, so 11.9 is false alarm reports. Board to review and any discussions, any thoughts on this report? If not, can we receive the report? Thoughts? Motion to receive, Grant. Seconded by Ian. All in favor? Yes, okay. Okay, item 12 is the adoption of the previous meeting minutes on page 68. Any comments or questions on the previous meeting minutes? Nope, seeing none. A motion to approve this. Grant says you are the man. Lisa, thank you for seconding. All in favor? Yes. Okay, 13, Zone 5 update. Kind of an interesting thing. It looks like Zone 5 has a little controversy leading into this meeting from the notes that I read. So on page 81, and I'll turn this to Vice Chair McSweeney to give a brief update on that. Interesting.
Sure. I'm also vice chair of Zone 5, and I think what this really is the boards that comprise Zone 5 are in a variety of different circumstances with respect to being able to organize themselves and hold meetings and function as detachment boards. And I think the feeling among the executive were that until that occurs, we're not really and the insurance issue was also a piece that weighed heavily on some people's minds. Until all of that is sorted out, that it's better to stand down and not have a zone meeting. And I know that for the insurance reason alone, that kind of echoes what the OAPSB has been telling boards, I think out of an overabundance of caution. But those are just my views. In any event, when the Zone 5 meetings resume, I'll let the board know.
Very good. Any questions or comments on that report, board members? No, seeing none, a motion to receive. Grant, thank you. Lisa, thank you. All in favor? Yes. Okay, so item 14 is the amended and restated archival services agreement. And the background on this is we've always had an archival agreement. This board has had one with the town of Orangeville. The piece why it had to be amended is simply because of the legislation and the name change, and needed to be updated and made sure that it was true. So essentially, you've got a new document with a new name on it, and that's why it was done. There isn't a major change. The writing was approved by the clerk. The writing was also approved by this board, and we now just need to receive that report, approve and receive the report.
Just one other reminder that this archival services agreement operates almost in conjunction with our bylaw number 2, which deals with records retention and maintenance. So the two go hand in hand. I'm not sure how other boards handle it, but that's the way we've done it as part of our governance materials.
Motion to receive. Lisa? Grant? All in favor? Yes. Great, thank you. Item 15 is the spring conference, and Member McSweeney, you were going to give a verbal update on this. Need to turn your mic on, yeah.
So I'll keep this brief. I went for one. The conference was June 3rd to June 5th, but the meat of the conference was on June 4th up in Collingwood. So I attended on that day, and it's, you know, it was an interesting day. It was pretty obvious that that most of the boards out there, and I really can't speak for the police service boards, the municipal boards, but most of the OPP detachment boards were still a long, long way away from understanding what was required of them in order to comply with the new legislation. There were a number of interesting discussions. There was a plenary session that was led by Ryan Teschner, who's the Inspector General of Policing. And, you know, I won't go into everything that he talked about, but it was kind of a, you know, one of my, and I actually stood up a couple times and talked about this. One of the opportunities I think that were really missed at this conference was the opportunity to provide some practical advice to police, to particularly OPP detachment boards, with respect to what it is they were expected to do to organize themselves and to comply with the legislation. It was still far too high level for my taste, but I could tell by the reaction that was what other people thought too. They were wanting, you know, directions. What do we do? Are we going to be provided with templates, or like how do we operationalize all of this stuff that's new? And I think a lot of the presentations were still, for the entire presentations, we're still hanging around at the 30,000 foot level as opposed to doing kind of deep dives. So Ryan Teschner is, I suspect he said he was about halfway through visiting every OPP detachment board in the province. And, you know, I think I'll wait for a bit, but at some point this summer, I might contact his office and invite him specifically to Orangeville. I think we'd like to see him here sooner than later. I think he would benefit from seeing us, and that we would benefit from seeing him. So you can, if the board is okay with me reaching out and contacting him, that's one thing I would like to do. The other sessions that were more of working sessions or working groups were breakout sessions. So they had breakout sessions for municipal police service boards, and they had separate breakout sessions for OPP detachment boards. Sean Tout gave what I thought was an outstanding presentation on the OPP detachment boards. And it was at that session that I learned about their proposal to extend the June 30th deadline. But he was just, I mean, we're fortunate to have him. He was just really on top of everything, but still, you know, at the 30,000 foot level. And then there was a presentation by a board, the Haldeman board, that was titled Successfully Operationalizing Your Detachment Board Practices and Lessons Learned, which, you know, was a great title. And I'm not throwing shade on that board at all. They had approached all of this very differently. They had, for the last little while, had been talking about what they needed to do, but maybe at the 15,000 foot level, and hadn't really done anything yet. So if you put that board together with what we've done, it almost seemed like the perfect combination. And we've shared our materials with them. So they were a long way away in terms of their thinking, their communication with their municipality, and their thinking about what it is that they had to do. They just hadn't actually written a lot of the stuff down that they needed to write down. So they were like the perfect marriage between what we'd done and what, and maybe the bridge of what other boards should be doing. It's pretty hard to start at one end or the other unless you're willing to complete the cycle and make sure that you've actually got everything that you need. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. I mean, hopefully the next few sessions at the OAPSB, and the OAPSB has done a fantastic job. I'm not dissing them at all. They've really done a huge amount of work in making sure that police boards, all police boards, are in a position where they can use the OAPSB as a resource. There's just a lot to do, and there's a lot of individual work that needs to be done by the boards themselves. So, you know, they know where we are, which is really the only message that I went there with this board's approval to broadcast, that we've been there. We're happy to be of help. Please contact us if you want help. And that's actually started to happen.
Very good. Okay. Thank you for attending on behalf of our group. Any questions or comments on that board update? No, it's very clear. Okay, motion to receive that information. Mayor Post, Grant, thank you. All in favor? Yes. So 16 is the board website revisions. I've been on the board website. It looks quite sharp. Looks good. Looks good. We're in a good place. Is there any information that needs to be shared other than that? Like, it seems like we're there.
I think we are there. The only final piece that Mary Lou and the board need to execute is to make sure that when somebody visits our website, they can hyperlink to our actual documents. That still needs a bit of work, and we've talked about that before. It's a combination, I think, of getting the IT resources to do that and making sure that we have database space to hyperlink to.
Okay, and then pictures, obviously, too, right?
Pictures, there are a couple of updates, yeah.
We just, can we just resolve in September that we all make an effort to come and put that in the notes that we'll be here live and get that done? That would be great. Okay, motion to receive that update on the website. Grant, thank you. Lisa, thank you. All in favor? Yes. And then.
So sorry, Mr. Chair. So Mary Lou, if you could maybe diarize a meeting with Tabitha Tabitha's the IT person. At some point over the summer, we can just have that discussion and tee everything up that we need to tee up for September.
That's great. So this is the other OPP detachment boards. Yes, with the recent interactions with other OPP detachment boards. So I've got one here. Did you want to start this, Ian?
This is really more of what I was talking about. So we've been contacted and had discussions with Shelburne, I think Trent, several other boards in Zone 3, as well as Lisa Darling, and they're all wanting to have electronic copies of our governance materials. So we've already talked about the annual report that the OAPSB wants to have, which I'll give them, but I just want to make sure the board is comfortable with, the board is comfortable with me sharing the entire governance package with the OAPSB as well. They're just going to post it. as an example.
Does anybody have an issue with that? I certainly do not. Nope, hearing none, and please proceed. Do you need a motion to do that, or? Okay. Make the motion that we instruct Member McSweeney to act on the board's behalf and share our intellectual property. Good. You're smiling. Is it not intellectual? Yeah. All right. Okay. Grant's made that. I'll second it. All in favor? Yes. Okay. Very good. And then I guess just my brief correspondence is, and Mayor Post, maybe you just take this from me. I don't know. I'm not trying to move my things off on you, but you would have more contact with these folks than I would. And it's the mayor of New Tecumseh. We had heard through our inspector that they were doing some wonderful things in terms of team building with the boards, the county, or the council and the OPP detachment. They had a small budget set aside where they had done some fun things that were, allowed some public interaction. And I reached out. I did meet with the inspector, who was the formerly within Orangeville, Dave McLagan. But I have not heard from that mayor, and we do not know the story. So I can continue to follow up, but I imagine you'll run into the individual.
Can you just send me the email communication that you've had, and then that'll trigger me to follow up with the mayor? Thank you.
Yeah,
no problem.
Will do. Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, my observations from being on their website is that you might offer them to contact us for some assistance in putting their governance materials together.
Right. Very good. Yeah, I think it would be good because, that could also dovetail with the budget, right? If we needed a little bit of funding to do those things. Okay. I guess I should have waited for one motion. Why don't we just take the motion for both, if that's okay? Can we do that or no? You want another one?
Sorry, Chair Taylor, I'm just unclear. The last motion was in regards to reaching out to New Tecumseh, was it?
So what we just covered off was New Tecumseh, yeah, and I'll follow up with Mayor Post.
I think it could just be a motion to receive the updates for both.
That's what I think too.
I don't think there's any more direction than that.
Yeah, we can handle it offline.
Yep.
So can you take it for both? In other words, we take it that first one. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And then item 18 is the board ratification. Do we need to explain this, or can we just push this, or how do we want to?
I think we should push this to the next meeting if we feel there's a need to deal with. This is all just bootstrapping based on the timing of the effective dates of our board member appointments. So I think it can be safely put off until September.
Do you need a motion to defer? I can move a motion to defer.
Yep, on the understanding that we'll bring it back and do it then.
So we'll defer to September meeting, and that's put forward by Mayor Post. Grant, would you like to second that? Thank you. All in favor of doing so? Yes. Great. So 19 is the action registrar update, board review and discussion. Any comments or questions on item 19? Oh, Grant, please go ahead.
Just a couple of there's a couple of dates that have passed, and I just don't know if this is not it's some updating. Meet with the town communication staff again to follow up the above website. I know we just talked about website. So for our own governance, if we've got target dates of January 8th and we're past that, readjusting the date.
So I think we should, if dates of still active items are adjusted forward, we do need to change that. I think for other dates, the idea is that their action register should reflect all of the action items that are within the calendar year, even though they may have been completed in that calendar year. That way we'll be able to look back and see for the calendar year, and then we'll start again in 2025 with either items that have been moving forward because they're still active, but we'll get rid of the legacy things that we've already completed.
Grant, is your comment though, does it have a completion date there?
Yeah, it does. It says it was due January 8th, 2024.
But is it indicated as completed or no?
It's in progress still.
In progress still.
Yeah, okay, so that's just a mistake. So we'll just correct that.
And for my own interest, did we achieve the deadline date for the MCRT grant on June 19th?
We did.
Awesome.
That's submitted.
Congratulations. Some great work to get that done.
Yeah. Do you, you know, I wonder, maybe as a sidebar, that action register, maybe it's a similar exercise if you hate to do it to you, but if it's not clear, it might be good just to have a second set of eyes. It's just a brief discussion at a.
No, I think it's, I'm happy to take it on. I think it is clear. I just think it's one of those things that it's, if we're going to, we have to be on it to make sure it's up to date and it's all that. So it looks pretty, like there's a couple target dates there. I don't think there's any issues. There's probably some minor commentary around it. You know, a couple items that haven't got a target date. Are we still doing them? Or are we going to push them off?
Okay.
But yes.
Well, that's good. So one of the things that we've talked about before is to what extent we need both the work plan and the action register. And I think we convinced ourselves that for now, both they're sufficiently different and separately useful that we'll keep both. But when you look at the work plan and this, maybe you can give some further thought to that.
Anytime you've got to rewrite information in two different spots, you're just creating, you know, errors. So if there's a way to merge it together and be a holistic view, it might be worthwhile, but
Yeah.
I will add that to the scope of.
You will.
But the work plan is it's a slightly different thing. It's intended to be a template year over year to identify things as opposed to specific projects. So it's a bit of a more nuanced thing. Anyway, I would love to have your views on it.
Post?
I was going to say similar to what Ian did is that the action registry is really a working document that we're constantly modifying, changing, adding new tasks to as things come up through the year. So it won't look the same year after year. It's really a project management tool more than it is anything else, where the other is an ongoing template that we're going to continue to use as a reporting document. But I think it's important to have both. And I think some of the projects, even though there's a target date of maybe January on one of them, it's become a larger project. So it is still in progress. We had hoped that there would be a complete merger of the website by that point, but then we've added a whole bunch of new tasks below it that change that target date. So I think the miss is actually changing the target date on that one item rather than the in progress piece, because I think it's still in progress. And that document has really helped us stay on track with what our action items are and who needs to take care of what. It's been a very helpful document this year.
Yeah.
And the newest addition to the action register will be this project that Grant has taken on. So we should revise it for the September meeting to reflect that project.
I just to add on to that, to what Mayor Post was saying, I think it's also a great opportunity if we can't meet a deadline, what are the blockers? And it's a great opportunity for the members to come forward into this group and say, these are the blockers that are preventing me from hitting. It's a timeline, it's a resource, it's a liaison into another entity. But so no, I agree. There's value in both of them, but maybe there might even be a way to cross-reference and simplify. But no, I will take that with much joy and enthusiasm.
That's great. Joy and
I can't
enthusiasm.
read your sarcasm yet, Grant. We'll get there.
Well, that wasn't sarcasm. I got nothing else to do this summer.
Okay, so on that, we're adding it to the action register update, right? That commentary. And do we need a motion to do so, or we err just on that instruction? Nope.
Yeah, I think we'll add that to Grant's project
Okay.
and add Grant's project to that.
Yeah.
I'm putting your project on the action register. Yes, it's somewhat circular, but I think it's efficient.
Yeah, that's great. Excel wouldn't like that. Okay. So we're not going to make that motion. We're just basically going to accept it and receive the data. Yeah. Okay. And can we do that? So the action register grant, Ian, thank you. All in favor? Yes. Perfect. 20, there's no correspondence. 21, any new business? No? Oh, Ian, please.
I have one final discussion with Lisa Darling. So this, Lisa has been reaching out to the ministry with the question, and I was surprised by the question because I hadn't actually thought of it before. And I think did I send the email around to board members? If I didn't, I will. And so Lisa, the question is, do OPP detachment boards have the authority to name themselves? And I'm not sure how this question came up, but nevertheless, the OAPSB was asking the ministry. And the ministry lawyers came back and said that, that OPP detachment boards, I think they said they don't have authority, or we can't answer that question. Each OPP detachment board should seek legal advice on it. So Lisa reached out to me and to ask me for my views. And my views are this, that the legislation clearly allows police service boards to name themselves. The legislation and the regulations provide for the creation of OPP detachment boards and empower OPP detachment boards to provide names to the committees that they construct. The legislation gives the OPP detachment boards very clearly the right to sue, to contract, and to be sued. So all those are kind of powers of a person. My view is that OPP detachment boards do, in fact, have the ability through bylaws to name themselves. And you can either do it by a bylaw, which embeds the name, or they can empower themselves in the bylaw to name themselves. And that the proper question that, and I think Lisa asked it this way, is like, do detachment boards have the authority to name themselves? I think the question that the government was answering is, should OPP detachment boards seek legal counsel when they name themselves? In other words, not whether or not they have the authority, but is there some intellectual property or other issue when it comes time to name an OPP detachment board that they need to seek legal advice on? Pretty obscure questions. And I don't propose that we spend any time on trying to figure out what the answer is, other than to amend our bylaws. I'm happy to do this. We can do it now. To amend our bylaw by adding in a provision which empowers the board to name itself. And there's a very convenient little spot to do that in. And you can either do that now or agree that that should be done, and we can actually pass it in September.
Grant, do you want to speak to that?
Just curiosity, value need to name ourselves outside, like is the Orangeville OPP detachment board not?
That's our name. So the regulation, it's strange because I just sort of breezed over this. If you look at the OREG 135 that dealt with the consolidation of OPP detachment boards and the legislation, what was created as OPP detachment boards for certain catchment areas. So for Orangeville, the regulation didn't name the board itself. So it's an open question of whether or not, how boards are to name themselves. That's the question that went to the OAPSB for certainty, right? So if we're contracting, the importance of a name is so that you're not confused. Your name allows certainty on the part of the public on who they're dealing with. So the OPP detachment board is a pretty certain name. But if you named it something else, like, I don't know, the Lisa Post Detachment Board or whatever, that would be something that wouldn't be reasonable. And so I don't know how this question came up to Lisa, but I know that the question she asked was, do boards have authority to name themselves? And the answer she got back from the government was unhelpful, I think.
So is there a legal issue right now with the way we are using the term the Orangeville OPP Detachment Board? I guess, what's the value in updating our bylaws?
The value in updating the bylaws is now that this issue has been identified as an issue, I want to make sure that we're not on the opposite end of however it may, come down when the government decides to do something about it, or if there's some exposure out there that I can't identify. I don't think there's a copyright or an intellectual property exposure. That may have been what the government was thinking of. I think it's absolutely absurd to think that the board, with all of our powers and our ability to contract, can't name itself. And the one issue I think that's important is that the name that any board chooses should be sufficiently certain so that there's no room for confusing it with any other board. And I think our name does that. So I'm really it's kind of bootstrapping, just putting it in our bylaw.
Theoretically, we could call ourselves the Headwaters OPP Detachment. I mean, but that's why, if we wanted to do.
If we thought that was reasonable, the beauty of using Orangeville is that it accomplishes two things. It identifies us within the Orangeville catchment area identified in the regulation, and it's also descriptive of where we are.
Go ahead, Graham. You're all good?
Okay.
So to me, it seems like such a minor issue. It would almost, but you're recommending that we do this?
Well, we can decide not to. I guess I'm recommending it. You're right. It is such a minor issue, but somebody in the government thinks it's not a minor issue, and that concerns me.
Well,
so
if it concerns you and it's a minor issue, then we might as well do it. Okay?
I think so.
Okay.
That would be I'm not providing you with legal advice, but
so would you know a couple would you like a motion along the lines of we would update the bylaws and review them in September?
I think that's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay. That's excellent. So Lisa, do you want to speak to it or do you want to make it? Lisa would like to make it. Okay. And Grant would like to second it. All in favor of that? Very good. Any other new business? Nope, seeing none. We are at the day of the next meeting is September 17th at 4 o'clock. And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Grant and Lisa. Thank you. All in favor? Very good. Okay, guys. Thank you
Thanks,
for a nice
everyone.
meeting.
Have a good night.
Have a good summer.
Good night.